Hey everyone, it's Sleepy Reader. I am here once again with the comic book thoughts, comic book countdown. I read 10 new comics this week. I gotta say, I enjoyed them all to lesser or greater degrees. So everything is positive. I will count them down based on my utterly subjective, in the moment enjoyment of which comic I enjoyed the most. Starting with the comic I enjoyed the least, but I enjoyed them all, as I said. Before I go too much further, let me shout out a few people. Two channels that I recently discovered are Everything Comics, who does a weekly comics and coffee video about his new comics of the week. I think, at least at the moment, that's what he's focused on. Bob. And he's local to Portland, and I actually went to the cafe that he shoots in because he said it was a really great cafe, and he was totally right. I loved that cafe. Refuge, I think it's called the Refuge Cafe on 92nd and Foster. Kind of, for me, the classic do-it-yourself, homemade cafe with its own personality that Portland should be all about and used to be all about, I think, but isn't so much anymore. And then another fun YouTuber that I recently stumbled across, or perhaps finally watched his videos, I'm not sure which. Sometimes I'll sub somebody, and I'm subbed to so many people that when their videos go by me in my feed, I'm not sure what they are. Anyway, total tangent. His name is Surly Tim, and his comic book reviews are definitely surly, so he's named himself well, but in a good way. I like hearing his thoughts about the comics he reads, and he occasionally throws one in the air that he really didn't like. So, yeah, he's more surly and I'm more sleepy. So, and actually a third shout out to Sam's Tangled Web, a great guy who I have had the pleasure of hanging out with once, and today I am going to go out for lunch with him again. So I'm really psyched about that. See you soon, Sam. Actually, you'll see this after we have lunch. So, on to the comics. In at number 10 was Inferior 5. This is just really confusing to me, A, because it's not about the Inferior 5 that I know. It seems possibly vaguely linked up to Brother Power the Geek and to the Dingbats of Danger Street and other things like that, and to some event, some DC event from 1988, which I can't remember. Maybe I never read. That would be after the Infinite Crisis on Infinite Earths. But what came next after that? Anyway, so there's some kind of alien whose name is vaguely familiar to me, who was supposedly defeated. What was there, something called Invasion or something like that? But now they're working underground to create sleeper agents amongst human beings. So it's kind of interesting. It's really a slow burn and confusing. It would be a lot better if I knew all the DC history that they were drawing on. And I know a lot of DC history, but not all of it. I love the Keith Geffen art style. I would like to see more of this. It's kind of, was it Jose Munoz that he was accused of copying of? It's kind of a cross between Kirby and the Jose Munoz style that he aped during the 80s. Anyway, I think he's made it his own, and it's a really fun art style. I wish it, and this is co-written with Jeff Lemire, but I wish it was at service to maybe something a little less obscure. It would be great to just have a regular superhero comic book with this high quality, sort of retro-esque art. But to me, it's very sophisticated art. And so that's the main reason I liked it. I'm curious to see where it develops. I need to go back and maybe read Dingbats of Danger Street. I just bought from GPAP. I bought the two Brother Power the Geek comics. So I've never read those. Maybe that will enlighten me somewhat here. And I should look into if there was a crossover called Invasion or something like that. and maybe just read about it on Wikipedia. But anyway, that's a lot of homework to do. Standing by itself, it's kind of just a confusing comic that's still kind of fun to read. Strayed is a really unusual sci-fi comic because it is about, and this is issue 3, and I haven't on video chatted about Strayed before. It's about a woman. It takes place in the future, probably fairly far future of Earth, lots of space travel, etc. A woman who has a special connection with her cat, and her cat has a special power, which is it can astral project all around the universe from planet to planet. And so the kind of evil Earth government is forcing her to make her cat find planets that they can exploit. And they exploit it in a very extreme way. They basically kill all the inhabitants and take all the resources. And I guess the woman and the cat don't really know what they're doing, but clearly they're hostages and such. So the reason this is at number 9 in this kind of low down is because of the fuzziness about how all of this works. And the moment the cat finds a planet, they immediately can send spaceships there, destroy all the inhabitants, and take all the resources. And you would think that would take years. So I guess you could say, well, it's comic books, I guess. But that kind of stuff bothers me. The art is by Juan Do, who also does his own coloring. And I have constant mixed feelings about Juan Do. I'll really like the art on a few pages, then find it kind of confusing and unclear on others. Sometimes the colors seem brilliant, and other times the colors seem to be getting in the way of the pictures. So it's kind of a mixed bag. It's a really cool idea. It's very depressing, but I wish the story were worked out a little bit more for us to go through this kind of depressing story. Anyway, it's a cool comic. I'm definitely glad I'm getting it. Just those quibbles about it keep it kind of lower on my enjoyment. Maybe this one should have been lower, but anyway, I already put it in my pile at number 8. It is Savage Sword of Conan. What's the number on it? Number 10. Legacy number 245, although it seems particularly unfair to consider this a continuation of the old black and white oversized magazine. But anyhow, I was excited because this had Roy Thomas and Alan Davis teaming up to do Conan. To my knowledge, Alan Davis has never done Conan, and Roy Thomas has done hundreds of Conan stories, some of them really great ones. I would not say this is a great Roy Thomas story so far, but it's a solid entry. It has an interesting twist where Conan signs up as a mercenary to help out this noblewoman, but he really has his own plans. Now those plans go awry, and it seems like Conan didn't think his plans very realistically, because he challenges the leader of a group of raiding tribesmen to a duel, as if I can take over your tribe just because I duel with you, and he's not buying it. And you kind of would expect that, why should I give up my power just because someone else is a better swordsman than me, who isn't even a member of my tribe or anything like that. But anyway, it was still kind of a fun thing. What brought it down really for me is I was not feeling I was excited to see Alan Davis do Conan, but I was not really feeling the way he did it, the way he drew Conan in specific. And maybe it's the colors too, but I'm not a fan of the way this is colored. But the way that he draws everything, it seems like there were a few issues of Conan that were drawn by Neil Adams, and it seems like a very awkward sort of rip-off of that Neil Adams Conan. And I know Alan Davis is a very Neil Adams influenced artist, but it just seemed too close and yet not close enough so that it didn't work for me. And it wasn't horrible or anything, but it just didn't click with me the whole lot. And Conan is really, a lot of it is about the art and the artist. Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen, I continue in at number 7. I continue to, this comic continues to grow on me. I had more fun reading issue 4 than I did issue 3, which was more fun than issue 2. So, yeah, nothing to be taken seriously here. And Matt Fraction, the writer, jumps around in time a lot, which makes it really confusing for me, because in the present, Jimmy Olsen is disguised as Timmy Olsen, Jimmy's younger brother or older brother, and he's kind of developing almost a new personality, which is kind of cool. But then we keep flashing to other times, and it doesn't tell us this. But then slowly I was realizing, oh, this is a Jimmy Olsen time before he pretended to get shot and became Timmy Olsen. But so it gets unnecessarily confusing, which to me takes away from the humor rather than adds to the humor, because I'm busy being kind of confused and trying to figure out what's going on. And maybe some of the Timmy Olsen scenes are also kind of flashbacks from conversations that Jimmy is having with Lois Lane. So it would have ranked even higher if it was a little less confusing, but I'm still loving the Steve Lieber art. This cover has nothing to do with what's on the inside, but it's a really fun cover. Kind of wish it did have something to do with what was going on inside. Anyway, at number 6, Guardians of the Galaxy. This cover is completely misleading. Rocket Raccoon does not die in this issue. Sorry to spoil it, but maybe this should be the cover for the next issue. I don't know. So what we have here is good art and a very fun story from Donny Cates. Just very solid cosmic marvel with little twists, with Drax the Destroyer coming back as some new being. And there are vast parts of the modern cosmic marvel that I have not kept up with. So I don't know the status of Warlock and his other self, Magus, but we have a young child Magus, and I thought he was pretty cool, even though I don't know the backstory on him. So anyway, this is just a really fun outer space romp. Probably, I'm guessing, better read in trade, but I'm definitely enjoying it in singles, because each issue is just a little bit moving forward of the story. They really don't at all kind of stand alone. Okay, so let's see, was that number 6? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. In at number 5 is this really odd comic from Frank Miller and John Romita Jr. And this is like 64 pages of oversized pages that are dense with events and panels. And it's a bit overwhelming to read all at once. So I think part of why it's high on my list is the physical pleasure. I like big comic books. I like them when they're on really high quality materials. I really like these covers. I like the whole package. I'm realizing I really love what Alex Sinclair has been doing with the colors on here, page after page after page. The colorist really does a lot to bring pleasure to me in this comic. And John Romita art has kind of won me back over a little bit. There'll be panels that throw me out and they just look wrong, but there's a lot of good stuff in here, and a lot of his and the inker, Danny Mickey's, use of blacks and stuff like that I really enjoy and that you don't see so much in comics these days. So it just gave me a lot of graphic pleasure. And then the Frank Miller writing is weird. There were, like in issue 2, this is issue 3, the final issue in the series. In issue 2, there was horrible stuff that I could barely get through, and I put it down. When I finally picked it back up, I was super charmed by the battle between Superman, or is he Superboy at that point, and Poseidon, the king of Atlantis. And it just had this wonderful over-the-top feeling. And there are moments in here that are just these wonderful over-the-top, crazy narration stuff that I really go for. And then it slides back into kind of the normal Superman story. I like it when it goes crazy. So it was a real mixed bag. Frank Miller's all over the place here. He throws out tons of cool ideas, but he doesn't utilize many of them. Even the whole thing with Atlantis, the end of last issue, Superman was staying in Atlantis, basically the consort or possibly future husband of Lori Lamaris, and they were going to rule Atlantis together. Well, that's completely dropped here. And whatever's going on between Superman and the army, and he's probably working to save Atlantis from the army, but that happens, it's a scene, and then it's over with, and we don't come back to it. So this is a real frustrating bag, but somehow overall I had quite a bit of fun reading all these Superman books. The Superman Year One, which is not Year One, it's like Superman first 25 years kind of comic. I think to a lot of people this is just going to be a confusing mess, but somehow I managed to enjoy large chunks of it. I kind of hated the end, but yeah, it was just a weird comic, and I enjoyed the weirdness of it for some reason. Oh, cool back cover too. I got all the Frank Miller covers, which this picture of Wonder Woman really upset my daughter. She said, "That's not Wonder Woman, that's a man." So there, for whatever's going on in Frank Miller's mind. So that was number 5. Number 4 was Vampirilla. As always, not a fan of the Vampirilla covers, but the art inside, who's the artist's name? By, I can't pronounce it, Ergen Gundes, is really growing on me. Really good storytelling, just kind of cool, lots of cool, subtle, different angles on the pictures and stuff. I think he does his own coloring, which seems to be improving to me too, or I'm getting used to it more. So, and this is a really wacky story. I thought at the end of last issue we were going to go into more about Vampirilla's mother, but she's kind of disappeared from the scene again. But we keep going with the psychiatrist, and the story, it's a very uniquely told, unique kind of story. I mean, unless there's all kinds of other Vampirilla stories that are exactly like this, but I doubt it. We get introduced to this male witch here, who seems like he's going to be an interesting character. There's still elements of confusion. Christopher Priest still writes as if you know more of what's going on than you actually do, or you know more of what he's thinking and who he's talking about. So there are moments where I'm a little lost, but overall, it's a really cool comic. I can't really recommend it to anyone until we get to the end of the story and we see if Priest pulls it all together. But at the time, I personally am really enjoying reading it. Once and Future is... I thought this was a more generic story than some people did. Everyone was loving it, but it's also growing on me, and it's pulling me in. The what's the word? The gravity of the story, not the gravity and seriousness, but just the intensity of the story is pulling me in and keeping me in. And it's developing nicely. We swung back to the what seemed like a throwaway character at the beginning of the comic, the professor that our hero was having a date with. We've come back to her, and so now she's going to be an important character, and it's kind of fun. And yeah, that's about it. It's just the fun in this keeps going, and that's really good. I would be shocked if this does not get turned into a movie or maybe a TV series, but it seems like just ready to be a fun movie. Trees comes in at number 2. Yeah, so Once and Future was number 3. Trees comes in at number 2. This is Trees number 2. Or I should say Trees 3 Fates number 2. And this is a really good read. It's kind of a crime story taking place in the shadow of those alien structures that are around Earth that we're calling the trees, although there's a picture of it. No one really knows what they are, judging from the first volume that was just called Trees. The thing is, am I remembering wrong? I thought that Trees, the original series, just kind of stopped and the story wasn't finished. And the story was like 4 or 5 different threads of stories from around the world that were slowly continuing. So it feels weird now that we've just moved on to another story. This seems to be focusing on just one series of events. If you didn't know what the trees were from the other books, it might be really confusing, like, why is this called trees? There's not really much talk about the alien structures, or that they have changed life in this small Russian town. I know because I understand the trees. There used to be a bigger population there, and it's kind of the end of the line now of the train and everything. But that's all, to me, very implicit. So I would have trouble recommending this to someone who hadn't read that frustrating earlier run of the trees that never finished. But having read that makes this make more sense. And I know that this is intended to be a limited series. I think 5 issues. It doesn't say on it. But anyway, Jason Howard's wonderful, stylish art, wonderful coloring, which I guess is also by Jason Howard with assists from someone else doing the flats. So a really nice package to read. Probably another one that would be best in trade, but I'm happy reading it in individual issues. And finally, at number 13 of the current Lucifer comic from DC Vertigo, part of the Sandman universe. And I'm really happy to report, after 13 issues, and I'm surprised it ended at 13, it's not over, but I mean, the story we've been following for the past 13 issues concludes here. Cleverly, satisfying, tying up the knots, reconfiguring how we viewed everything that happened in the previous 12 issues. So brilliant, wonderful. Just what I want. I want the good ending, which is really hard to come by. So, of course, I'll keep reading Lucifer, but you could just read these 13 issues. Know you'll get a satisfying story. Hopefully, they'll just put them in 2 trades and not like put 6 issues per trade and have number 13 like in the next trade. I think that would be really unfortunate. But yeah, all the strengths of this series are there, and just delighted how it turned out. Ironic because the other book by this author Dan Waters, Coffin Bound, had me all confused and frustrated, but this has given me everything I like to get in a story. So happy ending there, number 1. I will be back soon, no doubt. I hope all of you guys have had some great comic book reading. I look forward to anyone who does videos about their current comics. I love seeing those. Let me know if you do them and I perhaps have missed your channel. But I will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.